Tea, Mr. Holmes.
Is it poisoned, Nanny?
There's enough of that in you already.
I tell you the truth, I always thought that the character of the most famous detective in history was totally fictional. Like, we owe it to the writer genius of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the trick with this feeling that Sherlock Holmes was real. Well, he ought to be. His personality with all those numerous peculiarities is so convincing. So no wonder a whole universe, a fandom was built around his name already in his lifetime. Well, in the lifetime of Doyle, to be precise. There is even that famous flat in Baker Street 221B that really exists.
The name Sherlock Holmes and the address is 221B Baker Street.
Yet that was just wishful thinking of the fans of the detective series. There was no Sherlock or someone like him in reality. Well, that's what I thought until I sat reading and preparing my video about Sherlock Holmes actors. It has not been released yet, so you are welcome to subscribe not to miss it coming. And in the course of preparation, I realized that there were actually a number of rather viable suggestions of who might be the rather close prototype to the consulting detective.
You're a bloody psychopath.
High-functioning sociopath. With your number.
I found that very interesting and decided to share it with you today. By the way, if you are into those detective mysteries and their iconic sleuths, check out my videos about Poirot and Miss Marple from this playlist here. I'm sure you'll find lots of curious facts there.
My mind rebels at stagnation. Give me problems. Give me work.
The Scottish Arthur Conan Doyle explicitly said that his literary inspiration, not personal one, we'll come to that later. So the literary inspiration for Sherlock was taken from the fictional character of Le Chevalier c'est Auguste Dupin, invented by the American Edgar Allan Poe in 1841. He sort of kickstarted this whole detective fiction mania that would win the reading public in the late Victorian and Edwardian eras and keep its leading position throughout the 20th century with its golden age of detective fiction, and even now being fueled by super popular stage and screen adaptations.
Right, you're out.
Until next time, Big Joe.
Always a pleasure, Mr. Holmes.
Thank heaven you're here, Lestrade. I'd almost run out of jokes.
You know, in another life, you'd have made an excellent criminal.
Yes, and you, sir, an excellent policeman.
That Dupin wasn't just a sleuth. His thing was this combination of considerable intellect with creative imagination, sort of putting himself in the mind of a criminal. This alone sounds familiar already, isn't it?
Holmes, what are you doing?
Nothing.
Are you wearing a
False nose? No.
In addition, he also had a companion who is the unnamed narrator of the stories, a prototype of Watson to some extent. Interestingly, Doyle made several references to Poe's character in Sherlock stories. For example, in the first one, A Study in Scarlet from 1887, Dr. Watson compares Holmes to Dupin, to which Holmes replies, "No doubt you think you are complimenting me. In my opinion, Dupin was a very inferior fella. He had some analytical genius, no doubt, but he was by no means such a phenomenon as Poe appears to imagine."
What the hell are you doing?
Bored.
What?
Bored!
No.
Bored! Bored!
Funny, right? Holmes talks about Dupin as a fictional personage, as if he isn't himself.
What? What is it? What did I miss?
Well, it appears he wasn't that far from such an assumption. Just think of this. The name of Poe is bigger and certainly feels more real than the name of Dupin, while that of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, no matter how praised and noted he was, is shamefully standing in the shadow of his famous creation.
Ah, Watson. It's a wicked world. And when a clever man turns his brain to crime, It's the worst of all.
Unlike Agatha Christie with her Marple and Poirot, Doyle was certain and rather open about the origins of his Holmes. He insisted that his inspiration was some Joseph Bell, whom he met in 1887. Bell was a surgeon at the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh and a lecturer at the University of Edinburgh Medical School. Doyle was one of his students and later worked for him as a clerk. They said that Bell was famous for drawing broad conclusions from minute observations. In other words, he emphasized the importance of close observation in making a diagnosis.
Shut up, everybody! Shut up! Don't move, don't speak, don't breathe. I'm trying to think. Anderson, face the other way. You're putting me off.
What? My face is.
Everybody quiet and still. Anderson, turn your back.
Not your taxi.
Mrs. Hudson!
To illustrate this, he would often pick a stranger and by observing him, deduce his occupation and recent activities. These skills caused him to be considered a pioneer of forensic pathology at a time when science was not widely used in criminal investigations.
I said, focus! It's all well and clever having a mind palace, but you've only 3 seconds of consciousness left to use it. So come on. What's going to kill you?
Blood loss.
Exactly.
Later in his career, he even helped Scotland Yard in their complicated investigations. So this particular trait fascinated Doyle and he eagerly attributed it to his colleague. Amusingly, Bell was aware of this notion and as a gentleman didn't take this compliment for granted. Actually, he turned it back to Doyle and once wrote to him, "You are yourself Sherlock Holmes, and well you know it." This sounds interesting, isn't it? Certainly both men knew each other very well and we can rely on their proper judgments way more than our today's deductive conclusions.
You're Holmes the meddler, Holmes the busybody, Holmes the Scotland Yard Jack in office.
Your conversation really is most entertaining. If you would close the door on your way out.
And still, do you believe that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle himself could be the person behind his famous detective? Let's see what they had in common. They were about the same age. Doyle was born in 1859 and Sherlock appears to be 5 years older, being born in 1854, as we learn in his Last Beau story. Doyle was a physician by education and initial occupation, and Holmes was keen on chemistry, anatomy, perfectly knew the effects of various poisons. Both of them shared a keen interest and knowledge of botany. Arthur Conan Doyle loved solving crimes himself. The writer personally investigated 2 closed cases, which led to 2 men being exonerated of the crimes of which they were accused. Partially as a result of one of those cases, the English Court of Criminal Appeal was established in 1907. Moreover, in 1903, Doyle founded his own private social club, where they discussed crime and detection, criminals and criminology. Amazingly, this club is still functioning today. It is called Our Society. They meet 4 times a year and the membership numbers are limited to 100. The logo is of course the silhouette of Arthur Conan Doyle himself.
Madam, I need you to remain calm and trust me, I'm a professional. But beneath this pillow lies the key to my release.
In terms of religion, the writer went from being Catholic to agnostic and then spiritual mystic, quite a fashionable inclinations in his time. When it comes to Sherlock, he appears to be skeptically sitting on the fence of any particular religion, often sharing some atheist thoughts. Much like his creator, isn't it? Yet, to be honest, it doesn't seem that Holmes cared much about religion at all.
That's why I find this modern religious fervor so troubling. There's no latitude for misunderstanding.
Faith runs right over reasons.
Indeed. And chambermaids were once such a liberal breed.
My wife's a chambermaid.
Arthur Conan Doyle was an avid sportsman, a football goalkeeper, a cricketer, a golfer, a skier, an amateur boxer? Could you imagine he also was one of those 3 judges for the world's first major bodybuilding competition? Sherlock Holmes was also known for possessing above-average physical strength and being a fan of bare-knuckle boxing. He was undoubtedly one of the finest boxers of his weight that I have ever seen, says Watson. That's quite an unusual hobby for an intellectually consulting detective, in my opinion, and it brings the author and its character as close to each other as possible. Although Doyle certainly couldn't boast that particular strength and physical abilities, could it be that he deliberately enhanced these features in his detective alter ego?
First, distract target. Then block his blind jab. Counter with cross to left cheek. Discombobulate.
At the same time, they're so different when it comes to private matters. The portrait of Sherlock Holmes involves that certain level of asexuality, even despisal of womankind. The character of Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory would be a nice analogy here. No wonder Sherlock never married and never had any kids or relationships to which he would devote his mind.
Let's talk about murder. Sorry, did I say murder? I meant to say married.
On the opposite, Arthur Conan Doyle appeared to be happily married twice and had 5 kids in his 2 marriages. Interestingly, none of them had children of their own, I mean Doyle's grandchildren, so the writer has no living descendants now.
Imagine someone's going to get murdered at a wedding. Who exactly would you pick?
I think you're a popular choice at the moment, dear.
By the way, one of Doyle's sons, Adrian, claimed that for Holmes, his father took the methods of Joseph Bell and his own personality. That's what Bell actually meant, writing that letter to Doyle, stating that Sherlock was no one else than Sir Arthur himself.
Rache, German for revenge. She could be trying to tell us
Yes,
something.
thank you for your input.
Adrian Doyle reckoned that his father even explicitly admitted that at the very end of his life, when he knew he was dying. He gave one last interview to an American journalist in 1930 where he reportedly said, "I confess now that if anybody watched Sherlock Holmes, it was myself."
Now, Holmes was a puppet sitting on my father's knee. His ideas, his words, spoke through Holmes. And so it's really very difficult to differentiate one man from the other. They both belong to each other.
So, could we consider this case closed? Holmes is Doyle, or Bell, or both?
Did I really do remarkably badly?
Yes.
Have you not learned, my esteemed commentator, that the created is not the creator? This is another statement from Doyle himself, which he put into the form of the satirical 1912 poem to an undiscerning critic. So please grip this fact with your cerebral tentacle. The doll and its maker are never identical. Seems like Doyle from 1912 contradicts himself from 1930. What would you say? Do you have enough evidence to attribute the detective's personality to its author? Or is it more a combination of personal traits of 2 people, with a twist of complete invention?
We should call the police.
Yes. On their way.
For God's sake.
Oh, shut up, it's quick.
I would even go further and suggest, and I'm not alone in this idea, that Doyle's alter ego could have been Watson, not Holmes. Watson is a very real person, like any one of us could be. No wonder that he's the narrator of the stories, inviting us to share all those adventures with the impeccably rational genius who, thanks to the thorough observation of his companion, this Watson Doyle, becomes real.
What are you typing?
Blog.
About?
Us.
You mean me.
Why?
Well, you're typing a lot.
And who portrayed such complex personality of Sherlock at the best? We'll find out in my next video. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.
Part 2. Part 2 is more action-based. I'm gonna walk around, shake things up a bit.